This is The Final Word. It's season 17. It's episode 16. Geoff, for the first time in 22 years, South Africa's women hosted a test match. They hosted England. They were beaten heavily, but they hosted one, and it's a step in the right direction. We've seen South Africa return to the test playing fold of late, and we've seen lots of runs racked up against them, but we've also seen them make a World Cup final this year. So anything that advances the cause of the South African women's team, I'm on board with. So England have romped home by 286 runs. For the first time, England have won a test match in a decade, so that's noteworthy too. And England complete their multi-format points series, only losing one game. They lost one of the one-dayers from memory, 3-0 in the T20s, and then, of course, they win the test here ahead of their next multi-format series against Australia starting on the 12th of January.
Yeah, more draws than a furniture museum, the England women's test team. So, actually seeing a result, it was all based on when they rattled through South Africa and bowled them out for 64 on day 3. But, you can look at these scores and run the old arguments about, they shouldn't be playing the format because it's too difficult. It's a marginal gains thing. You've got to play more test cricket to be better at playing test cricket. And we've seen an awful lot of men's teams have some awfully lopsided results, including Sri Lanka getting bowled out for 40 the other week by South Africa. So, let's apply the same standard across the board. But yeah, Nat Sivabrunt, 100, the fastest as well, went it faster than a runner ball, which,
96.
Usually you get some pretty slow conservative batting in women's test cricket. Maya Bouchier made a test century as well, which is big for her. She's been quite fringe in that England international setup until relatively recently, but having a test 100 on your record is something that can never be taken away. So huge partnership between the two of them, and that set up a big win by 286 runs.
Yeah, so a bit to go into here. So, yeah, that quickest 100 mark has been lowered 3 times in a year now because Shafali Verma and Smriti Mandana both made quick hundreds last year against Australia, 113. Against England, one against Australia, one against England. Either way, 113 balls and 122 balls respectively. And now, even Maya Bouchier's 100 goes in as 4th all time being made.
It held the record for about 45 minutes.
Yes.
So Bouchier got there first, and then Sivabrunt got there second.
Well, Bouchier didn't overtake Verma and Mandana, but she did have a quicker 100.
She had the fastest England 100.
That's right. And then Sivabrunt overtakes that, just continuing the extraordinary time of it that Nat Sivabrunt's enjoyed through the last 2 years or so. She's the clear best player in the world, and that's a wonderful thing.
Can I lodge one objection though, Adam? In NSB, I hate NSB. I hate the 3-letter acronym thing that we do with athletes. Now, I don't know. I can't say exactly where this started, but from my experience working on websites about 15 years ago, it seemed to be rugby union that really, where it really kicked off. There were lots of rugby players with 3 names, you sort of Adam Ashley Cooper types, lots of hyphenated last names. So you'd, AAC and so on. But then I see it a fair bit in football, European football. You get those kind of things. And then I suppose it is in cricket with your SRT kind of Sachin Ramesh Tendulkar situations. But I don't know. Now that we've got the hyphenated, players getting married, we've got Danny Wyatt Hodge and so on. That it just bugs me. I don't know why, but it's so smug. There's something so smug about this sort of internet languaging. And no, we don't call her by her name. She's NSB. Piss off. Just use someone's name. They've got a name. Use it. I don't have time. I'm writing about cricket on the internet. I don't have time to write a player's name. Sort it out. I
don't think anyone's calling it NSB outside of the
doing
notes
it online.
Taken here.
They're doing it online.
Okay. No, the reason I took the notes here is that I didn't want Nat Sivabrunt to move me down to an extra line on the page for what it's worth. That was
I'm not objecting to you. I'm not saying you're doing it. I'm saying people on the internet are doing
it. No.
But
I haven't seen it. I haven't really picked up on it yet. But
I'm telling you, it's out there, and it is bugging me.
I'll tell you some other stuff. ADR was the previous woman to make 100 on test debut, Alice Davison-Richards. She did that against South Africa also a couple of years ago. This was the 4th English player. ADR was the most recent England player. So they laid the foundation, 395 for 9. South Africa used 8 bowlers, as they did against Australia when they played in a test match earlier this year. The 6th of those was Malaba, so Non-Kukuleko Malaba, who took 4 for 90, which I don't reckon you would have seen many 4-wicket bags from the 6th bowler in Test cricket over the years. That's a bit quirky, but, coming on so late and having time to take 4 for, but she was important there in giving South Africa at least a puncher's chance going through the lower order. But they were all out for 281. This is interesting. So there were starts everywhere. The captain, Woolvart, 65, Sune Luce, 56, Marizan Cup, 57. None of them go on with it, which is the difference between them and England here, clearly, because 2 of them make centuries. But Woolvart cops a fine for dissent. She cracks it when she's given out leg before to Sophie Eccleston. She smashed it, but no DRS, to use another acronym for you there, Geoff. No DRS. This is the only match being played in South Africa this season, men or women, at an international level, where they haven't had the technology available to them. So that's drawn plenty of scrutiny. I know that DRS wasn't used for everything until quite recently, but it does feel unusual now that we wouldn't have DRS for a test match, men or women. I know we didn't have it in 2019 in Taunton? I don't think we had it. Maybe we did even then. It's been standardised more recently, I suppose, is my wider point. But it does jar because obviously it's used in T20 comps around the world, and any limited overs match, you wouldn't dream of having a limited overs match without DRS now. So Woolvart cops are fine. It was the only wicket that Eccleston took in that innings, but Lauren Bell picked up 4 for 49, a couple for Lauren Filer, and a couple for Rihanna McDonald-Gay on her test debut. So a bit of Generation Next coming through there. Then England make 236. Knight makes 90, the captain. She was leg before wicket to Malaba, who I mentioned before, and that would have been totally reviewed as well. It could have easily missed the off stump, so she fell 10 short of 100 on something that she would have sent upstairs. Maybe the most enjoyable part, though, of England's second innings is that Maya Bouchier made a duck. So on test debut, a century and a duck. A 19-baller at that. And I have got a text from Samo, Andrew Sampson, for those. She's the first woman this has happened to. 100 and a duck on test debut. Andrew Hudson, Keaton Jennings are the only 2 to have done it where they've made the 100 the first time, the duck in the second. And Gudapa Vishwanath and Mohammed Wasim both got second innings hundreds after getting a blob.
Oh,
in their
that's
first
much better. How
on
sweet would that feel? On the pair, debut, blob, and then you ton up in the second innings. Oh, what a feeling.
So Malaba gets 6 for 67, so a 10-wicket match for the left-arm spinner, which is terrific for her. South Africa set 351, and as you mentioned off the top, all out for 64. Only took England 19.4 overs to knock them over. And, Lauren Bell got Woolvart early and set the tone. Top scoring was Cat with 21. Lauren Bell 4 for 27, making 8 for the match. So, for those who have been looking at Lauren Bell as the person they want to lead this England attack, an 8-wicket test match will go an awfully long way, as will the fact that they've bounced back. There was a lot of consternation around this England team after they didn't make it to the semi-finals of the T20 World Cup. A lot of chat about whether they were a bit too comfortable in a number of ways, about their preparation, about the dynamic within the team, whether it was as cutthroat as it should have been. That's a top response, winning all bar one game in South Africa. And their next major assignment is the one that matters most to them, the Women's Ashes, starting in about, less than a month from now.
Ding Dong Bell, Ding Dong Drysdale. Maybe we can call her Denise from now on. Yeah, it will be starting early January. I think the first ODI is 12. Jan 12 up in Sydney. So all things being equal, I will be able to get to that game and the second one, and we'll have some coverage of the Women's Ashes through Jan. Australia finished their series against India that I spoke about with Bharat last week, where they absolutely pummeled the Indians. Harmanpreet was pissed off, the captain, been captain for a long time now, talked about the mindset of senior players not being there. They have towed up West Indies with Smriti Mandana, who is one of those senior players dominating that series. And Australia, they're supposed to play New Zealand. They're in New Zealand at the moment. Their first game got washed out. They've got Healy coming back she's got this knee problem, so she's not going to be keeping for the time being. So Beth Mooney will continue to keep, but Healy was going to play and to open, so what that meant for selection. And Georgia Vole, who made 100 in her second game, opening the batting. She won't be opening next time, but will she still be in the team? Possibly. Not sure who gets squeezed out there. They've got the usual Australian women's team problem of too many good players.
Yeah, whenever anyone's left out of the Aussie women's team, there's a really good case for why they shouldn't have been. So that's the quintessential great problem to have. Molineux missing with knee soreness opens up an opportunity over there in New Zealand, but Molineux's been outstanding since coming back from that serious injury a couple of years ago. Georgia Vole, right place, right time, making runs to get into the squad, then making them upon being picked. So great selection there. Glad she's getting another chance in New Zealand. Just on India, like Harmanpreet's got to go, doesn't she? Like Harmanpreet Kaur, terrific player. No one doubts it. Match-winning performer. No one questions it. But long time in the job, blowing up about the mindset of senior players, about why they can never win big games. I think fresh voice. And Mandana making runs again here. She's been around that team since 2017. I think she'd have been 2016, actually. So she's a senior player, but not that old. She might only be 24, 25, Mandana. Feels like we're ready for what's coming next in Indian women's cricket. Whatever it is, I think it's the right time for it now.
I wonder if I don't know if it is Mandana, because I wonder if she's just too nice. Like, she's so conciliatory with Harmanpreet. She's like, I mean, some of those things, like the Bangladesh series blow up being the most epic of them all, when Mandana's in the press conferences having to sort of cover for her captain, and it's like when you have one of your friends is in a terrible relationship and they've got one of those partners who's doing objectionable stuff at a social gathering or whatever, and they're always trying to cover for them. They're always trying to sort of smooth things over, or give a better impression of that person at other times, so that the rest of the friendship group is more, feels more well disposed towards them. It feels like that. Like Mandana's out there managing the reputation and the image of that Indian team, and trying to compensate for some of the things that Harmanpreet has said and done over the years. So, and I suppose there's a degree of diplomacy to that, but I just wonder if, particularly if Harmanpreet continues to play in the side, as tends to be the case, you step down from captaincy and then carry on as a player, is someone like Mandana going to have the sway to be able to stand up to her and actually, put her own stamp on a dressing room? I don't know about that.
Harmanpreet's been there forever as well. She made a debut as a 16-year-old, I think it was. So yeah, again, there's that experience on one hand, but there is a block somewhere there, and losing to Australia so comprehensively the other weeks, it just adds to it. Having had a bad World Cup and having missed big opportunities at the last couple of global tournaments, Commonwealth Games as well. Big Bash has started, Geoff. We don't tend to cover domestic T20 tournaments at the best of times. This is not the best of times, given how much we've got going on between Border Vasca darting around the country. My family are here. We're preparing for live shows, and our focus is largely elsewhere. But I can tell you there have been 5 games played. Some people have had a nice time at the cricket. I'm sure it's going well on TV. Jumping Jai took wickets on the first night. I know that happened, and that was interesting, because I'm all in on Jai Richardson being, Dale Steyn one day, although that was more of a thing probably 5 years ago. Cooper Connolly smashed it for Perth. The Melbourne Renegades lost to the Sixers, where Will Sutherland's back bowling, which is of interest to me because he wasn't bowling just before the end of the Shield break, where he was playing seconds as a batter. The Thunder beat the Strikers, having to chase like 32 with 2 overs to go, and they got most of those off Lloyd Pope, unfortunately for Lloyd, who only recently won a Shield game for South Australia. Sam Constas made the fastest 50 for the Thunder in club history, making 50 in 20 balls, I think it was, and 56 from 27 at the end, something like that, which helped bolster his case that he's in great nick at the moment. And last night, 2 nights ago, the Stars were handily defeated by the Heat, who chased down 163 in 2 down, with not much going on there for Melbourne. But for the Heat, Xavier Bartlett, 3 for 25. I wouldn't at all be surprised if we see his name on that Australian chart when we get it later today. If they're bringing in depth bowlers, I know Brendan Doggett and Sean Abbott were the depth bowlers for the Adelaide Test match when Hazelwood was last out. But it wouldn't shock me if Xavier Bartlett gets a chance to play for Australia sooner rather than later. Tall, swings it, etc. And last night at Kardinia Park, Hobart were rolled for 74. Will Sutherland bowling again, took 3 for, and the Renegades knocked that off in 9 overs. So, we're not going to.
But more importantly, Adam, last night at Kardinia Park, who should have been bowling quick down there and taking an early wicket? But Billy Stanlake. Billy was the king of Geelong last night.
Love it. I've got no interest in doing BBL commentary. It's not really, it's not, it's improbable it would happen anyway, given the way I balance my summer off. But to have the chance to Raw out. He's had an up and down season, up and down and back again, whatever the Gerard Healy bit is, and then Sandy. If he kicks this, Geelong. And then, Billy, you are king of Geelong. Oh, monkeys off the back, Billy. And you imagine getting into full stride on that.
It all would have fitted. He's been on a long injury comeback. He was bowling to defend 70. They were never going to do it, but he came on and he bowled quick and he got a wicket. And yes, he got lamped around after that. But, it would have
He was the king of Geelong.
He was the king of Geelong. 3 minutes, he was.
Oh, and G. Maxwell's playing tonight. In Adelaide.
Okay.
He's back.
Good.
So missing the first couple of games of the Stars. He's handed over the captaincy armband to Marcus Stoinis, and he's playing. So the hammy is in good enough nick for him to start playing the T20 stuff again. So he'll be trying to do all he can to get in good nick quickly and make any statement that he can between now and when that Sri Lankan squad's names for the first test there that begins on the 29th of January.
Jason Gillespie has pulled the ripcord. Barrett and I speculated about this on the show last week, and I thought he was trying to play hardball and not quit, because if he resigned, he was less likely to get paid out for his contract as opposed to if he got sacked. But there was what seemed to be a pretty concerted campaign to undermine him from the Pakistan Cricket Board. Worked eventually. He cracked it, as we covered last week, after his assistant coach Tim Nielsen didn't have a contract renewed, and Gillespie finally said, "You know what, stuff this. I'm out of here." He's from the follow ups that he's done, he's pretty angry. He's pretty upset, really, and. Why wouldn't you be? You come into that job, you know it's going to be complicated and difficult, but it was just next level, the white anting and so on. Like, I cannot understand the mentality of going to hire a high profile international coach and then just undermining them almost from day one. And to the point that you sideline them, it's humiliating, it's disrespectful. And the PCB have done themselves absolutely no favours. Why would any credible coach want to go and work for that joint when you see the way that they treat their people, even supposedly at the top of the tree?
Yeah, look, Dizzy's saying he was completely and utterly blindsided around, that's his quote, around the Nielsen decision. Bad comms all the way through. He went on to say that there was eyes wide open from him going into it, but, there's eyes wide open and then there's 8 months in and out. Remembering that, he'd overseen their come from behind victory against England. And Kirsten had been sacked from the white ball job. He quit the white ball job. Let's be clear about our jargon here. Before he'd even had the chance to oversee a one-day international. So Akid Javed, who is the interim white ball coach, is now the interim full-time coach. Make of that what you will. Or by that I mean he's doing red ball and white ball. So
it's bizarre.
It just feels like
go and get recruit two high-profile coaches and then get rid of them both within 6 months.
Since Mohsin Naqvi's taken over as the boss of Pakistan cricket, it has genuinely felt like one thing after another, and that's sad because there was a period of time when off the field they seemed to have their ducks in a row. There was the period of time when the visiting teams are going over there and were so complimentary about the way they were being treated. That's how I felt, Geoff, when we went to Pakistan. I felt like things were organised really well on that tour. Now it just feels like there's a degree of chaos that can't be healthy for anyone playing for them. I don't know whether it's related to the fact that Mohammad Amir has retired again from international cricket this week. So has Imad Wasim, Swansea's finest. But yeah, Mohammad Amir came out of retirement for the T20 World Cup earlier this year. He's only 32 though, right? So,
Imad Wasim has retired from cricket to spend more time with his cigarettes.
Yeah, well, Mohammad Amir, 32, he's retired to spend more time playing franchise cricket. But you've got to imagine there's got to be a world where Mohammad Amir can break Shahid Afridi's record for the most retirements. Not that we necessarily keep that stat, but he's retired twice from international cricket. I think he did a test retirement before he did his white ball one as well, didn't he? So there'll be room for him to make several comebacks and then several domestic retirements and comebacks there. If we dare to dream, we should say, being Pakistan, with Mohammad Amir, this could end up being a very special 4 or 5 years in the retirement stakes.
I look forward to him retiring from T10 cricket at one point, making the announcement. I look forward to him retiring from the 100 specifically. I'll be retiring from the 100 ball format. That can be a separate retirement. Then maybe he can make a comeback. The Northern Superchargers make an offer that he can't refuse, and he comes back and plays 3 games on a fly-in, fly-out contract and bowls 15 balls and then retires again from the 100. There's a rich field ahead of us which we're looking forward to, and all things Pakistan keep us interested. Do we have a definitive Champions Trophy bit now? Have we finally? Is there a stamp on this? Has this gone through the board? Is it approved? Okay.
Yep. Statement out last night. Statement out last night confirming what we've known for a few weeks now through the reporting on Cricinfo and other places, that the next 3 World Cups through to 2027, women and men World Cups will host India and Pakistan in neutral venues. So interesting that they were willing to make that concession for 2026 when India are hosting the men's T20 World Cup with Sri Lanka, but of course the India-Pakistan game would have been played at Ahmedabad in front of 85,000 people or whatever the capacity is there. So they're giving up on that to do this hybrid model. But to me, that reminds me how much it's the TV money that is where the real value is when India play Pakistan. So it's the pageantry and it's the extraordinary thing to witness firsthand. We've been lucky to be at a few of these now, Geoff. But it's playing in Dubai mustn't hurt them too badly over the next few years, and then there'll be, I suppose, a review done thereafter.
Well, if you look at the World Cup final, they were selling tickets for a couple of grand at Ahmedabad. So however many $1 million that is, if you extrapolate that across 90,000 people rocking up at the stadium, it can't be enough money for them to worry about trying to play the Pakistan games there. So if that is happening over the next run, in the context of TV money, it's about keeping the broadcasters happy. And
the risk of Pakistan then pulling out of that game would be too great a risk to run if they didn't eventually have some compromise along these lines. We were at the University of WA a couple of weeks ago, Geoff. The University of Western Australia, as I was later told to call it. If this were 10 years earlier or 15 years earlier, that's where Shakib Al-Hassan would be. This took me by surprise. I wasn't aware that he was seen as having a really dodgy action, but it turned out that when he played that one game for Surrey against Somerset last year, right at the end of the season, the game that he was flown in for, took 9 wickets, and that was the only game he played, much to the eyebrow lifting of many around the England domestic game. They still lost when Archie Vaughan picked up those wickets on the final day and whatever else. But still, it was in that game that he was reported. The ECB then sent him off for testing. He did it at Loughborough, where they now do the testing for England in the same way they used to do at UWA. And he's been banned by the ECB, and that's knocked into a ban from the BCB and the ICC into all affiliated competitions. So he's now kicked out of bowling for the time being. He's a specialist batter in the Lanka T10 at the moment, of course. But he'll need to have independent testing to get back. I'm not sure who does the independent testing, but can we get it done at UWA? Can the independent testing, can we get Shakib back to the bowling crease via independent testing in Perth? That's the first thing I thought of.
We're going to get on the phone to Aaron Chin. We're going to, put out some feelers. Can we put some dots on Shakib Al-Hassan? We want to dot him up. He's been dishing out dots for years. Now he's going to wear some dots. Yeah, I didn't realise that he was seen as potentially suspect either. But it's a bloody expensive one-game contract for him in the end. If it ends up being such a hassle for him, having whatever he got paid to go and play for Surrey, however many millions of pounds they threw at him for that one game, being the Barcelona of county cricket, it's probably not worth it for him in the long run.
Wouldn't there be much? He was just filling a hole. He was on home. He was en route back to Bangladesh and he didn't get back there. What a year it's been for him. As a member of Parliament, he was, I'll get the jargon wrong here, but he was subject to, as a number of government MPs were, to a murder charge that was being brought at one stage in relation to what happened with the riots. The farewell test that wasn't, when he finished up playing red ball cricket and he couldn't get back into Dhaka to play that game against South Africa, I think it was from memory. Fair bit going on in the world of Shakib Al-Hassan, and this adds to the drama of that. Always drama with Shakib, but yes. And as Aaron Chin said to us when we interviewed him, elite, his work, his PhD was involved in the differences in angle, degrees of bentness.
Straightening.
Of straightening. Better way of putting it than bentness, of elite finger spinners at the very top level versus the level below. Correlation or causation, if you play at the very, very top level, you're more likely to use your 15 degrees. So maybe he's been using them all along and we didn't even notice. We'll keep an eye on that in 2025 as well as it relates to Shakib Al-Hassan. There'll be more in that drama, I'm certain. Geoff, there's a non-World Test Championship test coming up on Boxing Day and indeed the New Year's Test as well in Bulawayo. So this is the first time Zimbabwe have hosted Test cricket in the Boxing Day New Year's slot since England were there for the Tide Test at Bulawayo, the Flip and Murder Them Test, the Nick Knight Test, the Heath Streak Wides Test, the test that our dear friend Mel Shawley was at in 1996, where it was a draw with even runs. Remarkable test match that. Afghanistan's going to be there this week. They've already been playing short form cricket. Afghanistan won the T20s 2-1, and then they absolutely smashed them in the second one-dayer after the first one was rained off by 232 runs in that game. Sequidala Atal. I'll try that again. Sedikwala Atal. There you go. Made 104 for Afghanistan out of 286 for 6. He's a 23-year-old left-hander making his way. And then, unfortunately, Zimbabwe were rissoled for 54 with Sekunda Raza top scoring with 19 not out. So Afghanistan's biggest one-day win. All over in 17 overs. But yes, the test match that's coming up on the 26th, which will be Zimbabwe's first since the one-off they played against Ireland earlier this year, has got a squad that includes 7 unnamed, uncapped players, which does include Ben Curran, who we speculated upon a couple of weeks ago. It would make him of the first brothers to play for different countries in Test cricket since the Pattinsons, where Darren played for England, of course, then James for Australia 8 years later. So Sean Irvine's captaining that team. Sekunda's there. And yeah, I mean, we'll follow it. I'm glad there are non-WTC test matches, another acronym for you there, Geoff, tests being played around the world. But yeah, it feels like Zimbabwe, despite hosting this, are going to be, let's call it second favourite.
To be clear, I don't have a problem with acronyms. Acronyms are useful. They describe things, and cricket is full of them, full of ICCs and BCBs, ODIs, and IPLs and whatever. It's just people. I just don't like people being acronymized. People are people. They have names. They should be given their names. Yes, the 7 unnamed players would have been interesting if Zimbabwe were like, we're going to tell you 4 of our players, and then we've got 7 surprise packets. They're all going to come in like Tism. They're going to have balaclavas on, and you're not going to know who's at first slip. We'll
Ron Hitler Barassi's going to walk out at number 3.
Yeah, exactly. So, so that could end up being kind of spicy. The Afghanistan-Zimbabwe thing is an interesting one over the next few years to watch as they both try to improve.
It's a bit like the Afghanistan-Ireland rivalry that ticked on for a while there. It doesn't make any sense, but given they're playing a lot against each other, it may well be the case with Zim as well. Some more acronyms for you, Geoff. The CWI, Cricket West Indies, Chief Executive Johnny Grave has been replaced formally. Now, what are we, about 5 months later or something? Yeah. I know that Johnny hadn't finished 5 months ago, but he announced it a while ago. Chris Dering.
The successor is Kevin Roberts, who they got from the next door office.
Yeah, well, Chris Dering has been involved in Cricket West Indies before. He was the guy who ran the 2007 World Cup. I'm not sure if I'd have that on my CV.
Ooh.
But he also
founded. I think that'd be distance. Oh no, that was a different Chris Dering. Yeah, that was that was my cousin Chris Dering.
He also funded Sports Max, which is a Caribbean sports broadcaster. He's the co-founder of a Jamaican investment bank. So, I mean, look, that's all we know about this guy right now. We'll do our best to interview him when we're in the Caribbean for those 3 Australian Test matches in June and July. We always try our best when we're overseas to speak to the administrators. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you line up an interview and they pull out on the morning.
Sometimes they pull out 5 minutes, well, actually 5 minutes after they're supposed to arrive while you're already there waiting to do the interview, not naming any names, country, just to my right on
long
the conventional
white cloud
world map, not saying anything specific. Yes, so change up there. I'm never entirely convinced when I see that an investment banker is doing anything. They're not usually the ones who I'm like, I think more investment bankers should be in charge of things. Things have generally gone well when that's the case. But we'll see, Chris. We'll see. Let's see if you pop around the press box and say hello. And in one of your favourite acronyms, your favourite institutions, Adam, the Marylebone Cricket Club, the MCC, has a new CEO. I'm so sick of CEOs. Not the only one, apparently. Richard Lawson is taking over from Guy Lavender, which was always one of the nicest names. You know, I'm not sure if people know this, but lavender, the word lavender, sort of comes from the word for laundry because the Romans used to use lavender to scent to make the laundry smell nice. Really? So the lavender, like lavar, is to wash in Spanish, and so presumably in Latin it's pretty similar. So yeah, it was the washing the smell of the washing. But it's
laundry is such an unpleasant, well, not unpleasant word, but laundry is such a functional word, and lavender is such a nice word to think and say and smell, as you say it even.
The smell of the washing. Have you put the washing on the line? And if you have, does it smell like lavender?
Okay. Well, Guy Lavender, I wonder whether his office, what that will smell like. He's gone to the WACO. And Richard Lawson's the new man in. He was an energy exec at the Mercuria Group and BP before that. So he has a background in energy. He went through a competitive process. Mark Nicholas was glowing about him in the press release, saying that he was a standout candidate. They always say that, but
they do always say that. Also, one of the organisations that's most vocal about trying to reduce its climate footprint. It's interesting that they've gone for a fossil fuel exec.
I was going to say the same thing. Like that is an interesting thing because MCC have been outstanding on reducing Lords' carbon footprint and like being on the front foot about this. They've got someone employed at the club who works on this policy specifically. So I'm not saying that I'm not saying that Richard Lawson is got a fucking oil rig in his backyard. Improbable.
It's just going to be an interesting move when the MCC comes out and says, we just think that natural gas is a transition fuel that we need for. We're just going to make sure that we get 20 years out of that before we start building some nuclear power plants.
What will be on the agenda, though, is the fact that the Spirit, 51% of it, is in the hands of MCC. So, like, that's the friction point right now. There's so much going on that front right now, and redeveloping the nursery side of the ground. And there's stuff happening at the club in the next few years, and because it's MCC, so much of that will end up being something that influences the global game too. So we'll keep an eye on that, and why not? We'll try and interview Richard Lawson at some stage as well. And that will also be the end of our weekly show this week, which we've somehow managed to get into 2 segments. Most unusual for you and me, Geoff, but it has not been a lack of topics discussed. Border Gavaskar and far beyond on season 17, episode 16. Thank you to everybody who supports the show on Patreon, patreon.com/thefinalword. Seabus Super and Tomorrow's Blackburn lawyers for partnering with us throughout the course of the Aussie summer. Come to our live shows. Glenn Maxwell, Ricky Ponting on Sunday night in Melbourne. Why would you want to miss that one? 7:30 p.m. start. 7th of January, Comedy Store in Sydney. Glenn Maxwell, Simon KATICH, both of those are book launches. It's going to be heaps of fun. Be there with us. Buy a T-shirt. Buy a book. T-shirts will be discounted on Sunday night as well. I should have mentioned that. It's all happening.
It's all happening. There are things to do. There are good times to be had over the festive period. So keep us in your lives. Keep us in your ears. Or just, I don't know, throw your phone in a river for the next couple of weeks and come back to us in January. Whatever makes you feel good.
And our Christmas episode, our interview, is already recorded. So we can say that it's a very good one, and it'll be with you for wherever you're driving on Christmas Eve. Okay, that's it for the weekly show. Have nice weekends, I guess it'll be, and we'll talk to you in a couple of days.